I stood at the edge of my backyard, watching as Karen and her group of self-important HOA enforcers froze in shock. The once clear water in my pool churned wildly, the flickering of hundreds, no, thousands, of sharp teeth shining beneath the surface. The HOA crew, who had been ready to enjoy their self-proclaimed community pool just moments before, now screamed and stumbled back, their arrogance gone in an instant. A slow grin spread across my face. How did things come to this? How did a quiet, suburban guy like me end up causing total chaos for the most power-hungry HOA president ever? Well, it all started the day Karen decided my pool wasn't mine anymore. I moved into this neighborhood thinking I had found my perfect little haven. The house was everything I wanted, the backyard was huge, and, most importantly, I had my dream pool. A deep, sparkling retreat, custom-built to my liking. It was my escape, my place to recharge after long, stressful workdays. I had no issues with anyone, that is, until Karen decided I wasn't following her rules. Karen was the self-appointed queen of the HOA, a middle-aged woman who ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist. Every streetlight, every blade of grass, and every mailbox was under her watch, and she loved every second of it. I'd seen her intimidate other homeowners before, fining them for tiny infractions, forcing them to repaint their doors, even telling them how many plants they could have in their front yards. But I never thought she'd target me. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter. A plain white envelope with the HOA's official seal landed in my mailbox, like a bad omen. I ripped it open and skimmed the words, my brow furrowing deeper with every sentence. The letter claimed my backyard pool was now considered a shared community resource. I was expected to open it up for the whole neighborhood, with scheduled swim hours and an HOA-appointed maintenance crew. My jaw clenched as I read the last line. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and potential legal action. The next morning, I stormed into the HOA office, the letter crumpled in my hand. Karen sat behind her polished desk, a smug look on her face. She barely glanced up when I entered, tapping lazily on her keyboard. "Ah, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I assume you've read the notice." I slammed the paper down on her desk. "You can't just take my pool," I said, my voice steady but firm. "That's my private property." Karen sighed dramatically, as though I were just a child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, John, it's not about taking anything. It's about community. The HOA has decided your pool is a valuable resource for everyone." She leaned back in her chair, a smug smile on her face. "It wouldn't be fair for you to keep it to yourself." I stared at her, disbelief in my voice. "Wouldn't be fair? I paid for that pool. I maintain it. I pay the water bill. How is it fair that my neighbors get to use it for free?" She tilted her head and smiled in a way that made my blood boil. "Well, that's just how things work in a planned community. You wouldn't want to be the only one refusing to contribute, would you?" Her voice carried an unmistakable threat. I left the office furious, but I wasn't about to let Karen win. Over the next week, I reinforced my fence, installed security cameras, and even put up a few no trespassing signs. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no, she was just getting started. It started off small, with neighbors wandering into my yard by mistake, kids climbing my fence to splash around in the pool. Every time I confronted them, I heard the same excuse. Karen said it was fine. Then the fines began. Letters started showing up almost daily, each one listing ridiculous infractions. Failure to comply with community standards, unauthorized fence changes, disrupting neighborhood peace. The fines quickly piled up into the thousands, and when I refused to pay, Karen upped the ante. One evening, I came home to find a group of strangers lounging by my pool, towels and floats scattered all over like they owned the place. A full-on pool party was going on. A neighbor I barely knew was grilling hot dogs. Kids were screaming as they cannonballed into the deep end, and Karen? She was sitting in a pool chair, sunglasses on, sipping a margarita like she was on vacation. I clenched my fists and marched straight over to her. "Get out. Now." She casually lowered her sunglasses just enough to look at me. "Oh, relax, John. It's just a little get-together." "This is my property," I snapped. "You're trespassing." She took her time sipping her drink. "Not according to the HOA. As of last night, the board officially voted to make your pool a community pool. It's no longer private property." I felt my blood freeze. "You can't do that." She gave me that sickly sweet smile again. Oh, but we already did. The anger that surged up inside me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I knew, right then and there, that this wasn't just about my pool anymore. This was about principle. This was about standing up to unchecked power, to someone who thought they could take whatever they wanted without any consequences. So, standing there, surrounded by entitled neighbors treating my hard-earned property like it was a public park, I made a decision. Karen wanted my pool. Fine. She could have it. But she wouldn't like what was coming next. As I walked back into the house, I pulled out my phone and started looking for something that would make this unforgettable. I scrolled past prank ideas, security upgrades, even legal threats, but nothing felt right. Then, I stumbled across something so outrageous, so wild, that I actually started laughing. Piranhas. I clicked on a video showing schools of them tearing through the water like living razors. Their reputation was legendary, fearsome, terrifying. And that's when it hit me. I had a plan. A plan that would make Karen and her HOA buddies regret ever crossing me. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at my laptop screen, the glow illuminating my face as I researched piranhas. I'd heard of them before, but now I was digging in with a purpose. Everything about them fascinated me. Their speed, their sharp teeth, their fearsome nature as predators. Of course, I knew the truth. Piranhas weren't the bloodthirsty monsters that Hollywood made them out to be. They were opportunistic feeders, not mindless killers. But that didn't matter. What really mattered was their terrifying reputation. That was the key to my plan. The HOA had pushed me too far, and now it was time to get back at them in a way they would never forget. The more I researched, the clearer my plan became. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I wasn't a psychopath. I just needed to scare the HOA enough that they'd never think of touching my pool again. The goal was simple: create an illusion of pure terror. If I could make them believe the water was full of deadly creatures, they'd be out of there in no time, and my pool would stay off limits forever. The hardest part, of course, was actually getting my hands on the piranhas. "This is my property," I snapped. "You're trespassing." She took her time sipping her drink. "Not according to the HOA. As of last night, the board officially voted to make your pool a community pool. It's no longer private property." I felt my blood freeze. "You can't do that." She gave me that sickly sweet smile again. "Oh, but we already did." The anger that surged up inside me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I knew, right then and there, that this wasn't just about my pool anymore. This was about principle. This was about standing up to unchecked power, to someone who thought they could take whatever they wanted without any consequences. So, standing there, surrounded by entitled neighbors treating my hard-earned property like it was a public park, I made a decision. Karen wanted my pool. Fine. She could have it. But she wouldn't like what was coming next. As I walked back into the house, I pulled out my phone and started looking for something that would make this unforgettable. I scrolled past prank ideas, security upgrades, even legal threats, but nothing felt right. Then, I stumbled across something so outrageous, so wild, that I actually started laughing. Piranhas. I clicked on a video showing schools of them tearing through the water like living razors. Their reputation was legendary, fearsome, terrifying. And that's when it hit me. I had a plan. A plan that would make Karen and her HOA buddies regret ever crossing me. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at my laptop screen, the glow illuminating my face as I researched piranhas. I'd heard of them before, but now I was digging in with a purpose. Everything about them fascinated me. Their speed, their sharp teeth, their fearsome nature as predators. Of course, I knew the truth. Piranhas weren't the bloodthirsty monsters that Hollywood made them out to be. They were opportunistic feeders, not mindless killers. But that didn't matter. What really mattered was their terrifying reputation. That was the key to my plan. The HOA had pushed me too far, and now it was time to get back at them in a way they would never forget. The more I researched, the clearer my plan became. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I wasn't a psychopath. I just needed to scare the HOA enough that they'd never think of touching my pool again. The goal was simple: create an illusion of pure terror. If I could make them believe the water was full of deadly creatures, they'd be out of there in no time, and my pool would stay off limits forever. The hardest part, of course, was actually getting my hands on the piranhas. They weren't exactly something you could just pick up at the local pet store. I dug deeper, searching for exotic fish suppliers, underground pet dealers, anyone who could get me what I needed. After hours of digging, I found a lead, a shady-looking website that specialized in rare aquatic pets. Among their listings was exactly what I was looking for, red-bellied piranhas. They were expensive, but by this point, I didn't care. If this worked, it'd be worth every penny. The next morning, I made the call. The guy on the other end spoke with a thick accent, his voice gruff and direct. "You want how many?" he asked after I told him what I was looking for. I paused for a second, then went all in. 10,000. There was a long silence. Then, he let out a short laugh. "You're either insane or you've got a really big problem." "Maybe both," I admitted. "Can you get them or not?" I pressed. Another pause. "It'll cost you." "I don't care." He quoted a price that made my stomach turn, but I agreed without a second thought. "Give me a week," he said, "and no refunds." I hung up and exhaled slowly. The plan was set in motion. Now, all I had to do was prepare for their arrival. Over the next few days, I made sure everything was in place. I made a few subtle changes to the pool to make it look more menacing. I darkened the water slightly with safe, non-toxic dye, set up underwater lights that would cast creepy shadows, and even added a few fake piranhas just to drive the point home. I wanted it to look terrifying before anyone even got close. Then came the security upgrades. I knew once I executed my plan, the HOA would be furious. They'd throw every legal argument they could at me. I needed to cover my tracks. I installed new cameras to capture every moment of what was about to unfold. I made sure to document every instance of HOA trespassing leading up to this point, collecting undeniable proof that they had repeatedly violated my rights as a homeowner. This wasn't just about getting back at them. It was about winning the war. A few days later, I got the call. "Your fish are ready," the voice said. "Delivery tomorrow. Be home." I barely slept that night. My mind raced with anticipation, excitement, and just a touch of fear. What if this went too far? What if someone got hurt? But I pushed those thoughts aside. I knew exactly what I was doing. The piranhas weren't dangerous unless someone acted recklessly. Besides, I never intended to let anyone actually get in the water. The next morning, a large, unmarked van pulled up to my place. The driver, a tough-looking guy with a shaved head and a permanent scowl, got out and opened the back. Inside were several large, sealed containers, each filled with water, and more importantly, thousands of small, glittering bodies. My heart raced as I watched the fish swim in synchronized chaos, their sleek bodies cutting through the water like little torpedoes. The man handed me a clipboard. "Sign." I quickly scribbled my name, and with that, the deal was done. He and his team worked fast, unloading the containers into my backyard. I'd already prepped everything: the water temperature, oxygen levels, everything needed to keep them alive. As they were released into the pool, I watched in awe as they scattered, darting through the water like a shimmering red wave. It was beautiful and terrifying. Now, all I had to do was wait. The timing couldn't have been better. That afternoon, Karen and her loyal HOA followers sent out a mass email announcing an official community pool day. They scheduled it for the weekend, encouraging everyone in the neighborhood to bring their kids, pool toys, and picnic baskets. The entitlement was unreal. They truly believed my pool was theirs. I almost felt bad for what was about to unfold. Almost. The day of the event came, and I didn't try to stop them. If anything, I made the pool look even more inviting. The gates were open, the water was calm, and I set out a few lounge chairs. I watched from my porch as people flooded into my backyard like they owned it. Karen, of course, was leading the way, her nose high, her sunglasses glinting in the afternoon sun. "See, everyone," she said loudly. "This is what community is all about. Sharing." I could barely hold back my grin. The first group of kids sprinted toward the pool. I saw their parents chatting, distracted, completely unaware of the danger below. My pulse picked up. Just as the first child reached the edge and was about to jump in, it happened. A single piranha broke the surface, its sleek body flashing in the sunlight before disappearing back into the depths. The reaction was instant. A woman screamed, "Oh my God, what was that?" Then another flash of movement. Another fin cutting through the water. A man stumbled backward. "Holly, are those piranhas?" Panic spread like wildfire. People scrambled away from the pool, knocking over chairs, drinks, and shoving each other to get as far as they could. Karen, however, stayed frozen in place, her face in shock. Then, she turned to me, her voice shaking with fury. "What the hell did you do?" I shrugged, barely holding in my laughter. "Oh, you didn't hear? The pool is officially community property now. I just thought I'd make it a little more exciting." Her face turned a shade of red I didn't know existed. "You can't do this. This is illegal. This is dangerous." I crossed my arms and watched as the last of the panicked crowd rushed out of my yard. "Oh, now you're concerned about safety? Funny, you didn't seem to care when you were trespassing on my property." She opened her mouth, then shut it, realizing she had no defense. She'd been caught, and she knew it. The pool was mine again. And this time, no one would dare claim it was anything but. The screams from my backyard were unlike anything I'd ever heard. Pure panic, total chaos. Grown adults tripped over each other, knocking over chairs and tables in their scramble to escape. Parents snatched their kids up, some pulling them so hard that their pool toys were left behind, drifting aimlessly in the water. The HOA's big pool party had turned into a complete disaster, and I stood there, arms crossed, watching the beautiful mess unfold. Karen was the last to react. While everyone else bolted the moment they saw the sleek shapes moving just beneath the water, she stood frozen, her face a mask of disbelief. I could almost see her trying to make sense of it all. She wanted to deny it, to chalk it up to some prank, but the truth was right in front of her. The pool, the one she'd smugly declared as community property, was now a living nightmare. She turned her furious eyes toward me. "What the hell did you do?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the terrified murmurs around her. I shrugged, barely hiding my amusement. "Nothing much. Just made a few additions." Her lips curled in fury. "You put piranhas in the pool." I let the question hang for a moment before replying. "Well, technically, I introduced a highly misunderstood species of South American fish into a completely legal, privately owned body of water. But if you want to call them piranhas, I won't argue." Her fists clenched at her sides, and for a second, I thought she might actually charge at me. Instead, she turned and barked orders at the remaining HOA members, who were still too stunned to do anything. "Get animal control. Get the police. He can't do this. He can't get away with this." I chuckled softly, shaking my head. "Oh, Karen, I think you'll find that I can." She whipped back to face me, her face now a deep shade of red. "This is a violation of HOA regulations. This is a safety hazard. You're endangering the community." I raised an eyebrow, tilting my head just enough. "Community? Oh, I see. You mean the same community that broke into my backyard? The same community that's been using my pool without permission? The same community that ignored every single one of my complaints when I told them to stay out." I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You took my property, Karen. You stole from me. And now you're mad because I decided to make it less appealing." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She knew I was right. She realized that if she admitted what had really happened, she'd be the one facing the consequences. Her only chance now was to twist the situation to make herself look better. But I wasn't finished yet. One of the HOA board members, a nervous guy with sweat already building at his collar, reluctantly spoke up. "Well, you'll have to remove them," he stammered. "The pool is still considered a shared community resource under HOA rules." I smirked. "Oh, is it?" I pulled out my phone from my pocket because I just so happened to have a few things that say otherwise. With a tap of my screen, I brought up the security footage I'd saved. Crystal clear video proof of Karen and her cronies repeatedly trespassing on my property. Footage of strangers climbing over my fence, neighbors throwing unauthorized parties, and most importantly, the official HOA meeting where they had arrogantly declared my pool as theirs without my permission. The color drained from Karen's face as the footage played. The crowd, now more curious than frightened, leaned in to watch. Some of them hadn't realized just how far the HOA had gone. Murmurs started, disapproving whispers, people shifting their loyalties. I locked eyes with Karen, watching as she scrambled for a way out. "You see, Karen, I didn't just dump a bunch of fish into my pool for fun. I did it because you forced my hand. You tried to take something that wasn't yours, and when I fought back, you doubled down. You bullied, you trespassed, you manipulated. And now? Now you've lost." I turned to the growing crowd. "And if anyone here wants to take me to court over this, I'd be happy to have a judge look at these videos." The silence hung between us. Karen's face twitched, her lips pressed into a tight, furious line. She knew she couldn't fight this. Not publicly. Not with so many witnesses. One of the parents, still holding their child's arm tightly, cleared their throat. So, are the fish actually dangerous? I smiled. Not really. They're mostly harmless unless provoked. But, perception is everything. A few people nervously laughed, realizing the game I had played. The HOA had terrorized this neighborhood for years, using fear and intimidation to get their way. Now, for the first time, they were the ones scared. And the best part? I hadn't broken a single law. Karen spun around and stormed toward the exit, pushing past people as she went. The remaining HOA members exchanged uneasy glances before hurrying after her. Once they were gone, the tension in the air lifted. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to stand up to Karen were now grinning, chatting among themselves, and throwing me approving nods. I took a deep breath and looked at my pool, now empty, still gleaming under the afternoon sun. The piranhas, my little backup plan, swam through the water, blissfully unaware of the chaos they had just caused. Then my phone buzzed. A notification popped up, showing an upload had finished. I smirked. While the HOA was busy freaking out, I had been busy uploading the whole mess to the internet. The footage was already going viral. Within minutes, the video was spreading like wildfire on social media, gaining momentum, and turning Karen's power trip into nothing more than a viral punchline. I plopped down on one of the overturned chairs and let out a satisfied sigh. The battle wasn't over yet. I knew Karen wouldn't give up easily. But for now, I had won this round. And as I watched the last of the HOA members scurry away like scared little mice, I knew one thing for sure. They would never, ever step foot in my backyard again. The fallout was swift and beautiful. By the time the sun had set, the video of Karen and her HOA lackeys fleeing my pool had already started making waves across social media. It began with a few shares, some comments mocking the audacity of an HOA trying to claim someone's private property, and within hours, it escalated into a full-on viral phenomenon. Thousands of comments rolled in, some laughing at the sheer entitlement, others fuming on my behalf, and some just enjoying the chaos of it all. Memes popped up, showing Karen's horrified face when she realized the pool was full of piranhas, others with captions like, "When you try to steal a man's pool, but forget he has a villainous plan." I woke up the next morning to a flood of notifications. News articles were already covering the story. Some called it the ultimate HOA revenge, others called me a genius, and one even referred to me as a modern-day folk hero. It was surreal, but incredibly satisfying. Karen had spent years bullying people with her so-called community rules, and now she was the one being humiliated. The HOA had thrived on fear and control, but they had never faced anyone willing to push back as hard as I had. Now, the entire country was laughing at them. Predictably, Karen didn't take it well. By noon, I found an official-looking letter taped to my door. The HOA demanded I immediately remove the hazardous creatures from my pool and pay a fine for creating a dangerous environment in the neighborhood. I read the letter twice, laughed, then calmly recorded myself tearing it in half before tossing it in the trash. They had no legal ground to stand on, and they knew it. It was nothing more than a desperate attempt to regain control. That afternoon, I got another visit, this time from a police officer. He looked exhausted, like he had better things to do, and I couldn't blame him. He introduced himself, explained that the HOA had filed a complaint, and asked if I was actually keeping piranhas in my pool. I nodded and invited him to take a look. He peered over the edge, watching the fish glide silently beneath the water, their sharp teeth barely visible. He whistled under his breath and shook his head. "Well," he said, turning back to me, "they're not illegal. You own the property, you didn't put them in a public space, and from what I can tell, you haven't broken any laws." I grinned. "Exactly." He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, between you and me, I think this is hilarious. But I have to file a report, so I'm going to have to ask, are the fish actually dangerous?" I shook my head. "Not really. They're mostly harmless unless someone's dumb enough to mess with them." He smirked. "That's what I thought. All right, well, consider this a courtesy visit. I'll file the report, but unless the HOA wants to take this to court, and trust me, they don't, there's nothing they can do." I thanked him, and as he walked away, I saw Karen standing at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, glaring daggers at me. She'd probably been waiting, hoping to see me carted off in handcuffs. When the officer got in his car and drove off without incident, her face turned an even deeper shade of red. She stormed toward me. "This isn't over," she hissed through gritted teeth. I leaned against my porch railing, calm and unbothered. "Oh, Karen, it really is." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "I will take you to court. I will sue you for everything you have." I chuckled. "Go ahead. You'll lose. And when you do, I'll countersue for harassment." She sputtered, her confidence finally starting to crack. She had built her power on intimidation, on making people believe she was untouchable. But now, standing there, humiliated and powerless, she finally realized the truth. She had lost, and there was nothing she could do to change that. A few days later, the real fallout began. The viral video had done more than just stir up laughter. It had exposed years of HOA corruption. People started coming forward with their own horror stories. Homeowners who had been bullied with outrageous fines, unfair rules, and forced property modifications. Local news stations picked up on it, running exposés on Karen and the HOA's shady dealings. The board members who had once stood by her side now scrambled to distance themselves. Residents started openly questioning why they were paying into an organization that seemed to do nothing but make their lives miserable. Then came the final straw. The HOA held an emergency meeting to address the growing public relations nightmare. But instead of rallying behind Karen, the board turned on her. The fines, lawsuits, trespassing, everything had gotten out of hand. People had already started a petition to remove her from power, and with the HOA's reputation in tatters, the board had no choice but to protect themselves. In a landslide vote, Karen was officially removed as president. She fought it, of course. She shouted, threatened legal action, and called everyone ungrateful. But it didn't matter. Her reign was over. A few weeks later, a for sale sign showed up in front of Karen's house. It wasn't a surprise. Her reputation was shot, her power was gone, and no one in the neighborhood wanted her around anymore. I watched from my porch as a moving truck pulled up one morning. She stood by her car, looking around at the neighborhood she had once controlled with an iron fist. Our eyes met for the last time, and for the first time, she didn't glare. She didn't scowl. She just looked defeated. Without saying a word, she got in her car and drove off. With Karen gone, the HOA fell apart. The remaining members tried to hold on, but with the bad press and overwhelming support to tear it down, they had no real power left. A vote was held, and for the first time in the neighborhood's history, the HOA was officially disbanded. Homeowners celebrated, some through parties. Others simply enjoyed the newfound freedom to do whatever they wanted with their own properties. As for me, I spent my first day under the new regime lounging by my pool, drink in hand, soaking up the peace. No fines, no threats, no entitled neighbors trying to claim my backyard as their own. Just quiet. A few friends stopped by later, curious if the Piranhas were still around. I chuckled, walking up to the pool and peering in. The fish were still there, gliding lazily, as if completely oblivious to the chaos they'd caused. One of my friends laughed. "So, are you ever going to get rid of them?" I smirked. "Nah, I kind of like them." We all laughed, and as the sun set, I leaned back, completely content. It had been a wild, ridiculous, totally insane ride, but in the end, I had won. My property was mine again. The HOA was gone. Karen was out of my life for good. And best of all, no one would ever dare try to claim my pool again.